had an opportunity come through. A company emailed me that they're looking to open up sort of an educational platform that assigns like mini projects that people can participate in. And then a company that asked for that app, whoever makes the best one will get paid for it, and the company will use it. And then the people that just submitted to learn that didn't win still get the experience. And then they also get to look at the winning app and the code behind it, and then an explanation of why it was chosen. So I think it's a really cool opportunity. If you're interested, I put it in the Discord as well, but on the slides here, we have this link. And I think they said the first 25 people that sign up are gonna participate in their like beta testing, which is just when they're testing to see how something goes and if they should continue it. So definitely sign up for that today if you wanna be a beta tester. I think it's really cool. If you know React, go ahead and sign up for it. It's pretty low stakes, but if you could get some money. So that's always good. So today you're just gonna need Replit, and yeah, no worries if you guys are late or have to go to the bathroom or anything. You're totally good. You don't have to ask or anything or apologize for being late. You're good. So yeah, we are gonna use Replit today, and I actually wanted to start off by going back to some of these Python conditionals, and let's see, where do we want to be with these? All right, yeah, these 3 assignments. So if you weren't with us on Monday, I hope you had a good holiday. And we just kind of went over some questions that people had mostly with these 3 assignments. I'm gonna go ahead and present. And so we have these 3 tasks, and I realized, I think I might have said it out loud once, but I didn't actually put it in the slides. This 3rd task was meant to be a challenge. So if you struggled with it, it's no worries. Also, just in general, don't worry about assignments in this class. This is just for all of us to learn together. So I really don't want anyone to be stressed about assignments. I'm not grading them, or and I mean, I'll certainly look over them if you want me to, but I'm not. Your worth is not in whether or not you can complete these assignments, because we're learning. So I just want you to try it, and if you struggle, we'll all talk about it. If you get it, then great. So first off, we're going to start with this first task. So the goal is to ask the user to input their name, then print we have the same name if it's the same, or the relevant phrase if it's not. So here's the solution here, and I also will have a link. Okay, I don't know who that was, but please don't do that. I'll also have a link to the solutions as well. So if you have questions about
task 1 and 2 already.
What?
I did task 1 and 2 already.
Okay, yeah, awesome. A lot of people did.
When that sound popped up, I think I saw Donovan's window pop up in front of you.
Oh, okay, yeah. Let's
maybe there are family members in their background.
It's okay. All right, Donovan, did you need to say something? I just saw in the chat you said you need to say something. Okay, answered it right away. Cool. That's what we're going for. And but yeah, okay, so here's task 1. I think most of us are okay with this, but if you're not, let me know. I'm gonna go on to, and like I said, I'll have this link. So if you do have questions, let me know, like while we're talking about it right now. But if not, I'm gonna move on to this because we did talk about this with the Monday session. Task 2 was asking the user to enter a number and then saying if it is even or not. This one, also using if statements, you want to say if the number mod 2 is equal to 0, because if a number with the modulus 2 is equal to 0, then it will be even. Yes, Jacob, I'm sorry, I just saw that you were raising your hand.
Yeah, all good. So when I have that code, everything seemed to be fine, but then when I try to run it, it says no such file main.py replit process died unexpectedly, exit status 2, and I'm not sure what to do.
That is a replit problem. I would try restarting it. And
okay,
then,
but I did the def main and all that, Donovan.
Yeah, I would try restarting it, because I think that's just like a replit problem, not a Python problem.
Okay, so like just restarting the tab?
Yeah, I would just close the whole project and then open it again. Or as a last resort, copying the code and then creating a new project and pasting it in there.
Right.
I'm sorry, I don't really know why it did that. Sometimes Replit, like one of their computers, just does weird things.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, so
yeah,
I'm all ears.
Okay, yeah, let me know. I'll give you an update if that still doesn't work because some other
Sounds
people
good.
might be having that problem too. All right, so we got this task 2 here. So we want to say num equals int. Don't forget this int part because we want to turn the input into a number. And then input, we always have to assign input to a variable because it will return whatever the user types in. And if we don't have that assigned to a variable, it's just floating around. And Python is like, oh, I don't know what you wanted me to do with that, but I got this input and I'm going to continue doing code. So we want to assign it to num, convert it to an int, get the input, enter a number. So the user enters a number. If it modulo 2 is equal to 0, it's even, else it's odd. So any questions on that one? Like I said, we did talk about this one on Monday, so I'm assuming that we got most of those questions out of the way, but if you weren't here on Monday, totally good. All right, and now task 3, I think is the one that most people had trouble with. So this was the challenge task. Oh yeah, Jacob.
I restarted Replit, I closed tab and everything, and the problem still persists.
I'm honestly not sure why that
Should I just
would be
restart my
happening.
computer then, or and try to rejoin?
I honestly, it might be your internet.
That would
Maybe
not-
Google it. I
Yeah.
don't really know.
It says that you don't have not defined main.py, but I have done the def main.
Yeah, and but
All
it's
that
saying
stuff.
main.py, so it's talking about the file. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I would probably just create a new project and just put the code in the new
Yeah,
project.
sounds good.
Yeah. I'm really sorry I don't have an answer for that.
All good. I am really just trying to figure out what's going on. So sorry for the trouble.
Oh no, it's okay. All right, so task 3, I wanted you to go through each number less than 10 and then print if the number is prime or not. And just as a reminder, a number is prime if and only if it is divisible by just itself and 1. And then that should say only divisible. Oh, okay, it does by itself and 1. And you want to be using modulo, this percent sign, to check if a number is divisible by another number. Because if the modulo is equal to 0, then that means it's perfectly divisible, and then it can't be a prime number. So the trick to this one is using nested if statements, which we didn't talk about. Nested if statements is when you have an if statement inside of another if statement. Talk more about that later. I threw this out as a challenge for anyone that was really wanting to stretch their brain about if statements. So you're going to use if statements inside of if statements to check if a number is not divisible by each of the numbers that are less than it. So I'm going to scroll down here. I have the solution here. And it's a bit long, mostly because I added all of these comments because I wanted you to be able to read through it and understand. So this is just describing the task here. And then 0 and 1, by definition, aren't prime numbers. That's just a math thing. So don't worry about this. Just know 0 and 1 are not prime numbers. So I'm defining my main. Also, we haven't learned loops yet. We're going to learn that most likely on Monday. And so you didn't need to use loops. It is easier with loops.
Num equals 9. You were missing if num modulo 8 is not equal to 0.
Let's see on 9. Oh, on this one. You're right. Thank you for that. I'll tab all of this. Okay. Yes, I was missing checking 8. Thank you so much. Okay, yeah, the rest, thank you for that. Yeah, that would have been bad. But so basically you just want to start with 2 and go all the way up to 10. So we start with 2. There's really nothing. 2 is divisible by 2, obviously, because that's its own. Every number is divisible by itself. And then the only number left to check is 1, and 2 will be divisible by 1. And that is the definition of a prime number. So there's not a programmatic way to do that in this case. So you can just print 2 is prime. And in this case, I'm assigning the variable num to be the number that I want. So now I'm saying num is equal to 3. And now if num modulo 2 is not equal to 0, then you want to print it is prime because the only number less than 3 besides 1 or 0 is 2. And 3 will not be divisible by 2. Yes, there are some ways to solve it with a for loop, but we haven't got over them, so I'm not requiring it. But when we go over for loops, we can use our new knowledge to try to approach this problem again. So then I assign it to 4 and I check if it's divisible by 3 or 2. Next I go to 5 and I check if it's divisible by 4, 3, or 2. And you can see that I keep going. I just add 1 to num. I say num is equal to 6, and then I check 5 through 2, 7, and I check 6 through 2. And you want to check if it's not equal to 0, just as a reminder. And what these nested if statements are doing, you can add more and more. It's saying if num mod 4 is not equal to 0, then run this if statement, which says if num 3 is not equal to 0, run this if statement, which says if num mod 2 is not equal to 0. And now we have checked every number less than 5 and are able to say it's not divisible by any of them, so it is prime. So I just do this for all of the other numbers down here. And when do we learn how to draw visuals on the screen? I don't know what you're asking. Oh, you're asking about Aspie art. Maybe with loops. Maybe we can do that with loops. Okay, no. All right, well, we'll answer your question later. But you can still put it in. Oh yeah, sorry, Preston.
What would be a scenario where we would use a nested loop?
Use a what?
Nested if statement.
Something like this, where you would or would not.
Where you would.
Yeah, so this is a perfect example of doing that because you want to check every number less than this. Another nested if statement is really just like if you're checking for, I have a couple examples today, but really just if you want to check another statement. So if you want to check if x is less than 10, but then you maybe want to check if x is less than 10, is it even or odd? So something like that where you have multiple conditions that you want to look at. And I'll go over that because we're going to talk about that today. So that's a good question. And we'll definitely get to more examples. Does anyone have any questions about task 3? Okay, I'm not seeing any come in, but feel free to contact me, after class and stuff, if you have further questions on it. And then, check out the code, run it yourself. I'll just go ahead and run this just to prove that it works. All right, so it gets 2, 3, 5, and 7, which are our prime numbers less than 10. So that's exciting. Oh, I didn't have it print if it was composite, which I can add that. You guys want to keep me honest. But yeah, so that's just this challenge one. So I'm gonna go ahead and let's see. All right, so like I said, this is more fun with our conditional if statements, and that's called nesting. So like I said, nesting is when you have if statements inside of an if statement, and this allows you to check another condition if the first one is true. It will not check the next one if the first one is false because it never gets there, it never goes inside. So don't forget your indentations. That's very important. You still indent when you have nested if statements, kind of like you saw the staircase. It kind of looks like a staircase type deal. It goes, oh, indent, 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 indent. You cannot forget that. Okay, so that's over nesting. I meant to split this slide out so it's not all of the text all at once. But another thing that we can do with if statements is called logic operators. And some of you were also asking about this on Monday, if you came to the Monday session. Logic operators are statements that return or evaluate statements and return true or false. So this is like and or. So you're going to evaluate and then compare two statements. So here I have x is less than 3 and x is greater than 0. X is equal to 10 or x is less than 1. And these are just different, oh, sorry, my husband just walked in the room and it scared me because he wasn't home before. Oh, okay, I'm okay. So anyway, we have these and these or statements. And like I said, these will return a Boolean, so true or false. So and will return true if both statements are true. so in this example, if x is less than 3 and x is greater than 0, so x is between 0 and 3, that'll return true, or returns true if one or both statements are true. So this is just like when you're talking to someone. It's very much like our own language. If we say, I have a cat and a dog, the statement, I have a cat, and the statement, I have a dog, are both true. And so that whole statement is true. If I said, I have a cat and a fish, and I don't have a fish, then that whole statement is false because I don't have a cat and a fish. I just have a cat or whatever. That's just a quick example. The same thing with or. You could say, she has a cat or she has a dog. And that'll be true if she has a cat and a dog, or just one or the other. So it's very much like our own natural language here. And you want to write out the word and an or. And I'll show you how to use these in programming. You can also combine them with this last bullet here. And you want to use parentheses to group them so that Python knows how you want the statement to be split up. So in this one, just an example, I have x is less than 10 and y is greater than 20. All of that is grouped together. So, and then we compare it with this, or x is equal to 0. Yeah, Donovan, I got your question. I'll answer at the end. Short answer, no, we're not going to do that. So if we want to use these in if statements, you want to say if, then this condition. So let's say we have this example here with x is equal to 8. If x is less than 10 and x modulo 2 is equal to 0, we want to print this as an even number less than 10. So just to run through this real quick, x is equal to 8, and we're going to have this if statement with and. So if x is less than 10, which it is, so that's true, and x modulo 2 is equal to 0, that's also true, then we're going to print this is an even number less than 10. And then I have this other one where let's say a is equal to negative 2.6. If a is less than 0 or a is greater than 10, then you can have some more code down here. I didn't put it here because I was being lazy, but I just want to show you can put more code down here, or you should because you have an if statement. And so in this case, we have a is less than 0, that's true, or a is greater than 10, which is false, but because one of these is true, the if statement is still going to go because we have or. It doesn't have to be both of them. So do we have any questions about and or and like how to use them? I'm also going to show some examples on Replit. So any questions so far?
I just want to make sure I'm sorry to make you be a broken
No,
record.
you're good.
Modulo. That basically means there's not going to be a remainder.
Exactly, yeah. Most of the time when you use it, you're wanting to check if the modulo is 0, because if it's 0, then that means there's no remainder and it's perfectly divisible by that number. So you can think of it as if you're doing division and there's a remainder left over. Some people like to think of it that way. Some people also like to think of it if you, so if we have 8 and we want to see, oops, is 8 perfectly divisible by 2, we would say, okay, so if we keep subtracting 2 from 8, will we eventually get to 0 or will we get to some other number? So let's say it was 9. If we kept subtracting 2 from 9, say 9 minus 2, that's 7. Here, let me show this visually. I'm just going to scroll down here. Don't pay attention to the code up there. So for modulo 2, so let's say we have 8. And now we want to say 8 mod 2. We're going to say, so 8 minus 2 would be 6. 6 minus 2 would be 4. 4 minus 2 is 2. And you just keep going until you get to either 0 or before you get to a negative number. You don't want a negative number. And now if we say 2 minus 2, that equals 0. So if this last number here is 0, then it's perfectly divisible. Because, and it is, because 8 divided by 2 is 4 with no remainder. All right, Donovan, I'm seeing your questions. Don't, no, we're not going to get to that. In no classes, we're going to get to that. None of them. But I can talk about that at the end of class about why that is. Okay, so that's modulo. if we wanted to do like 9 or something, so 9 mod 2, this is just a way to think about it. If you don't like this one, then you can just think of it as remainder. So we say 9 minus 2 is 7. We're going to have 7 minus 2 is 5. And then 5 minus 2 is 3. And then 3 minus 2 is 1. And we can't do 1 minus 2 because that would be negative. So we end up with 1. So that's how we know that 9 is odd, because the modulo returns 1. So that is just an example for another way to do modulo. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Okay, yeah, we've got a lot of questions about video games and making video games. If you guys could move that over to like general or off topic or something, just because it's distracting me. Donovan, to answer your question really quickly, yeah, I don't know anyone that programs video games in Python. You usually use C#, like Brendan was saying. Yeah, I mean, some of them are, but like game devs are typically C#. And so like usually the point of Python is not to make video games. You can, but there's some other languages that kind of do that better in a lot of people's opinions, but you know, some people like it. All right, but yeah, video game talk, let's move that to general or something, because I keep looking at it and then getting distracted. Most games that you play are in C#. Okay, so now the last thing that I want to talk about is logic structure, and this is just determining what code will run. So if you want to look at a script that you're writing and you have all these if statements and stuff, you kind of want to be able to look at it and say, okay, which if statements are going to run based on the conditions and which are not. So it's basically just evaluating these conditional statements. Yeah, if you guys can just move that over to Discord, I'd appreciate it. So you basically just want to practice going through all these things in your head and then predicting what code is going to run. And so these are just good exercises so that to make sure you understand if statements and then like understand different ways that if statements and other structures that we'll look at will work. Okay, yeah, general. Let's see if I can find. Okay, so here's the first example. These are really common exercises in programming classes to make sure that you understand what's going to happen in a program. So I just have set up all of these variables. We have x is equal to 5.66, y is equal to 10, z is equal to 5,000. And so now I have these if statements. So first I have if x is less than 10. And then I have a nested if statement. If y is greater than 5, print this, else print this. And I have elif x is greater than or equal to 10, or z is greater than 100, print hello. Else, if all of these, if this if and elif are false, then print will this run. So does anyone, oh, whoops, I might have the answer up there. Hopefully you didn't see that. Well, oh, that wasn't an answer to that one anyway. It's okay. So if I run this, does anyone want to guess what will happen? And yeah, so elif is what goes after if. So it goes if this, elif, it stands for else if. That's if you want to check another condition. And then else is everything else. So we talked about that last Thursday. So if you missed that, be sure to go over the slides and watch that video, because that's when we introduced if, elif, and else. But yeah, if is just, elif stands for else if. So we're looking at this. Go ahead and put in the chat, what do you think the console is going to print if we run this? Doge. All right, yep, I'm seeing some dog. Yep. Yeah, so it looks like we've got it. So let's go ahead and run this. Yeah, it prints dog. And this is because x is less than 5.66. I mean, x is 5.66, which is less than 10. And then the other condition that we have nested inside this one is if y is greater than 5, then print dog. So That's one example. Now, if I change x to be 11, what will happen? All right, we've got to vote for cat. So I've changed x to 11. Got a mixed bag here. So a mixed bag of answers. So let's go through this. So we have x is equal to 11, y is equal to 10, z is equal to 5,000. So we're going to go through these if statements. So first we have if x is less than 10. Is x less than 10? It is not. So we're going to skip everything inside of this if statement, and we're going to go to the elif statement. And now we're going to see, is x greater than or equal to 10, or z greater than 100? X greater than or equal to 10, x is equal to 11, which is greater than 10. So that's going to be true. And then Python, usually with an or statement, it'll just see this true. And then the or, and know it can go ahead, but we're just going to check this just for practice. Is z greater than 100? It is. But like I said, we already knew that x is greater than 10. And so now it'll print hello. And then we don't get to this else statement because this already returned true. Do I need to go through that again? Do you understand why it's going to print hello? And I'll run it just so you believe me. So a bit of a trick. So a lot of you got caught up on this. Yeah, a couple of you got it. So good job. And good job for guessing. Anyway, I'm always happy to see guesses. So a lot of you got caught up on this statement right here because you saw that, you know, we have this if else thing, but this else is tied to this if. It's indented. And if this returns false, it's not going to even look at the code down here. It's just going to go to the elif statement. All right, so now I'm going to change x to 8, and I'm going to change y to -1. Now what's it going to print?
Cat.
Cat. All right, we've got a vote for cat. Got a couple votes for cat. Gato. Oh, I appreciate the multilingual.
Gato is a typo. It's
Nope.
meant to say cat,
Well, gato is Spanish for cat.
and caca is French.
Okay, no, I think they meant to say.
Well, the thing is, I think I know a lot of people that know the Spanish word the gato cat.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. I got it. I thought it was funny. All right. So I think we've got all of our votes in. All right, so let's just look at this. So we got x is equal to 8, y is equal to -1, z is equal to 5,000. So this says if x is less than 10, which x is less than 10. Now it says if y is greater than 5, y is equal to -1, which is not greater than 5, so that's false. So it's going to go to this else, and it's going to print cat. And now since we already did this, it's not going to look at the elif or else. So if you said cat, that would be correct. Let's run it so you believe me. Uh-oh. Replit is thinking about it. This is awkward. All right, Replit doesn't want to run this, probably because I said that I wanted you to believe me. Let's see. Okay, it's not wanting to run. Sometimes stuff like this happens, and that's okay. But it'll print cat. Yeah, it did that a lot. Yeah, it's a bit slow sometimes. I like the tool because it doesn't require anyone to download anything, and you can access it from anywhere. But it does sometimes just quit. So,
Why isn't it going to will this run?
because so if we go through this, so x is equal to 8. So our first condition that we check is if x is less than 10, which it is. And so now it's going to go to check these statements afterwards. So we already met this if condition, and so it won't even look at the elif or the else. But if we did want it to print will this run, we can make x greater than 10. So we can say x is equal to 15. Or Z is, oh, I want this to be false. Oh, I don't know if it will run the else because they said if x is greater than or equal to 10. Okay, let's get rid of that equals. And now let's make x equal 10. So now if x equals 10, then it's not less than 10. So that's false. It's not greater than 10. And z is 5. Sorry, I'm trying to make it so that it prints the else statement so you can see that it will print it. So x is not less than 10, not greater than 10, and z is not greater than 100. So now it'll print this else statement. And Replit says it's working. Let's see. Nope. Ah. Run again. There we go. Now it says, will this run? So there we go. Any other questions about that? So that's just some nested if statements and programming logic I wanted to go over. We're going to go over more examples for these, but I did also want to go over something else, which I have this slide for. I'm calling it miscellaneous tips for Python.
It's like debugging in Java.
We're not going to be debugging, but we're just going to go over just some things to make sure that we all know in our heads, just ways that Python works that people maybe don't say out loud or maybe don't explain. Is there a way to use this with answers and inputs? Yeah. So we can typically always bring it back to inputs. So I didn't want to overload the examples that I did. Maybe did I do an input one? No, I didn't. But yeah, you could certainly use this with inputs. So if you ask a user to enter a number and then you want to check the conditions for this number, any variable that you define could be an input instead if I wanted to say this is an input, enter a number or something. So yeah, you could definitely use that for inputs. Okay, so back to miscellaneous tips. I just mean different tips that I've gathered that I think would be helpful for this point in your Python journey. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with this. Okay, we talked about these opportunities. Okay, so first off, so running a Python script. So some software like Replit lets you run Python scripts by pressing a run button. So that's that green button on Replit. It says run. A lot of IDEs or integrated development environments, basically software that lets you program, a lot of them will have a run button, but you don't always need to use that. It works by using automatically generated files to help it know what to do when you press the run button. So someone had to program what that run button did, and it needs to look at your script and then a couple other ones. So if you ever look at Replit, and if you look at all the files it has in it, it's sometimes more than just your main.py file. And a lot of people are asking questions about that, but that's just so that it knows how to run it when you press run. You don't need that. You could just run it via command line. This is actually how I do all of my Python development for work. And what you can do is you can go to the terminal and you can type Python3 and then your file name, and it'll just run that or put out the error if there's errors. And so I have Python3 file name.py. You want to replace file name with actual name of the file. So for the ones that are called main, you'll just say Python3 main.py. You just put this in the terminal, make sure you're in the correct directory where your script is. But this is some ways to get around, like if you're having trouble with Replit, you can also just go to the terminal and type this in, and hopefully that'll work. But it will always work if you're local and you're running it on your own machine. And I'll show you how to do this. But a benefit to this is that you can run Python from anywhere. You don't need a special software. As long as you have Python installed and you can get to a terminal, you can just type Python3 file and you can run it. You don't have to have any sort of like fancy app that has a run button. So I just wanted to show you with this one. So if I go to shell and I type Python3 example1.py, that's my file name right here that I want to run. It's called example1.py. I go over to the terminal, the shell, I type Python3 example1.py, I press enter, and it's going to run it. So you don't always have to name your Python file main.py. You can name it whatever you want, and then you can type Python3 file name. Replit looks for main.py to run, so if you press the green run button, it's just going to run the main.py. Yeah, see, it just runs main.py. But if you want to create other scripts on here, like for the class or something, because I know I saw a lot of you maybe defining main a bunch of times. And that's totally fine if that's what works for you, but I wanted to show you some other options. So we're just going through some random tips, like I said. So any questions about that one, let me know. Also wanted to point this out. You can create, like I said, Python scripts with different names. The automatic one in Replit is main.py. But if you want to create one, make sure it has a .py extension, and then you can just run it. So we have Python 3. If we had a file named Python practice.py or hello world.py, it's a lot more straightforward than just pressing the run button in case that doesn't work.
Can you show what the shell looks like one more time, please?
Yeah. Let's see. So if we go over here, so right now we're in the console, but if you hit shell, looks like that, and you just type Python 3 and then the name of your Python file, and just do that. And that is that's actually how I run Python on my own machine. I don't typically use apps that have this run button just because they sometimes mess up, like we've seen Replit do. I like to just do it myself, but that's just a preference. Okay, so I just wanted to quickly say that. Oh, also, I discovered, so you know when you're typing in Replit and then it'll come up with all of these like tips and stuff, and sometimes it covers up what you're typing while you're trying to type. You can go to settings, and then the setting is called code intelligence, and then disable that. That will get rid of those annoying pop-ups if those bother you, which those bother me. If you like them, totally good. They have some good information, but I hated it. So you can turn that off. That's just another Replit tip that I have. Yeah, someone asked, do I use Vim? Yeah, I use Vim for all of my programming pretty much. I really like Vim. My husband does too. He likes it a lot more than I do. He knows a lot of fancy shortcuts in Vim that you can do really fancy things with. Vim is nice. All right, so now another thing I wanted to talk about was this is just Python, not specific to Replit or anything, but I wanted to talk about open and closing punctuation. So this is like your quotes, your parentheses, anything that has what we call the first one, which is open, and then the last one, which is closed. And you just really need to watch these in Python, because if you get them mixed up, if you have an open quote but not a closed quote, Python will interpret everything after that quote as a string. And that is a problem, because then you can't code. So just make sure that you remember to have both of these matching and that it's ending in the place you want it to. So anything with an opening punctuation has to have a closing, and really watch out for these if you're doing something like nested parentheses. So with this, I have this like mathematical statement where I have x minus 1 plus 2 times x. This whole phrase is in parentheses. It's really important where this ending parentheses, this closing parentheses ends up. And then this whole thing plus 5. So also another thing to look at is that you should have the exact same number of open parentheses as closing parentheses. This is a big cause of errors in Python. A lot of programmers, especially when you're just starting out, you'll get an error and you're like, I don't know why I have this error. First, check, are you calling main? Second, check, are your open parentheses and closing parentheses matching up? It's usually the number 2 cause of errors. Like I said, these are just random tips that I wanted to pass on. Another one is indentation. So we've seen this with our if statements, with our defining main statements, but Python relies on indentation to interpret what commands are inside and outside certain statements. And by inside, I just mean the code is used by that statement. So when we have an if statement, code inside the if statement is what runs when the condition for the if statement is true. Outside means that the code is not part of the statement. So like I said, indentation really important when we get into loops. It'll be important for loops, but the ones that we know right now are defining main and your if statements. Most anything that ends with a colon. So you want to indent inside a function definition to show that a code is part of the function. That's inside. But then when you call main, so if we look at defining main, so I'm defining main right here. And then everything in here is indented the same amount. It's a tab. If you mix up tabs and spaces, Python will get mad. So always use tab. Everything in here is indented. And then we unindent. We go back to the very beginning of the margin to call main. And so this is actually saying, let's run main. This is saying define main. Everything in here defines main. And then this is saying run main. So really make sure that you watch your indentation because that will mess you up a lot if you get it wrong in Python. Okay, just looking at the time. Okay, levels of indentation. This is like I was saying, you need to have consistent indentation. And when I say levels of indentation, I mean is when you have multiple statements requiring indents. So when we had those if statements, the nested if statements, they all had to have an indent after the if statement. And so that is called levels of indentation. So how many tabs away you are from the very beginning of the margin for a line. And it's really important to make sure these indentations line up. So I just have some examples here. So
Like
yeah.
in Java methods, they're only indented once.
Yeah, so so I just want to have some examples here for indentation. So we're defining main. We have x equals 2, we have this if statement, and then we have an else statement, but this is not indented properly. That's why I highlighted it in red. It's not indented properly. This actually should be indented to line up with this if statement here. And then this needs to be indented properly as well. So that is bad, that is good. Bad, good. All right. Are there any questions on indentation? I'm going to show a couple other examples, but I just want to make sure I'm hitting everything. I just wanted to run through some quick tips. Okay, so now this next one, this is a common one that I've seen before. It's when you define main, and then when you go to call main, it's still indented. That's not good. Python is going to think that means, yeah, exactly, indented back. So Python, if it read this, it would think that part of the definition of main was calling main. Whoa, that's called recursion if you're interested. But that's not what we want. We want it to be indented like that. Yep, exactly, thank you. Okay, so now I have this one, and I want you to tell me where the error is. Go ahead and type in chat.
It's
You
on
have some guesses, yeah. You have a
line
guess?
3.
Line 3.
Because you can't have no indent in an if statement.
Yeah, so this one. So we have some guesses. Is there any other? Does anyone have any other guesses? Yeah, I should have numbered these. Yes, so got some guesses. So yeah, so this needs to be indented after the if statement because there's no indentation. This will actually throw an error. If Python sees you have an if statement and then you don't have any indentation afterwards, it's going to say error. But yeah, so you want to indent it. So this is what's wrong. This one is okay because this one, I mean, it depends on what you want it to do. When I wrote this, I wanted it to print you have a perfect score if the score is 100. And then no matter what, also print your score is this. So just this one print statement needs to be indented. If I indented this one as well, it would only tell you your score if your score was 100, which that wouldn't be super useful, but I guess if you wanted it to do that, that's fine. Okay, and so those were the main examples. You could also use an else statement. Well, the problem with using an else statement to print out the score is that this wouldn't run if this was true. So what I wanted it to do was say, if you had a perfect score, to say you have a perfect score, your score is 100. That's just because I wanted it for this example. You could put an else statement, but then it would only print that if you didn't have 100, which is okay too, if that's what you wanted. So that's mostly what I had with these random tips. Does anyone have questions over anything that I just shared? It was just a random collection of stuff. Okay, don't be afraid to ask questions. If anyone's lost, please just reach out and let me know what's going on. But now I wanted to go back to these examples. Since we have some time at the end of class, I'm just going to go through these. And you guys can make up your own nested if statements if you want. And let me know how they turn out. But I'm just going to go through these and ask you to tell me what you think is going to happen. So I'm going to change these numbers because you can kind of see what the answer was. But let's say that this is 13 and this one is -2. Okay, so we've got this. Num1 is equal to 13. Num2 is equal to -2. We have if num1 is equal to num2 or num2 is less than 0, then do this. else print hollow, which is German for hello. All right, what are our guesses for what will happen if I hit run, or if I tell it to run this? All right, we've got some guesses for bonjour. Got some guesses for hollow. All right. Any more guesses? Okay. Thank you all for typing in your guesses. It looks like we've got a good amount of responses. Okay, so let's see. So our first statement, if num1 equals num2, well, that's false. But we have this or, so we can check the next statement. Num2 is less than 0. Num2 is -2, which is less than 0. So this is true. And because we have this or right here, this is going to run. So it's going to say if this one is false, but this one is true. So it'll still go. So now we print bonjour. So yay. So we print bonjour. Okay, now we would have another thing to check. Now we say if num1 is less than or equal to 11, which num1 is 13, which is not less than or equal to 11. So this is going to be false. But we have an else statement that's going to run only if this one is false, and it will print Guten Tag. No, no one's dumb. Don't worry. Yeah, so we had a couple of right answers and a couple of maybe not right answers, and that's totally good. But it looks like this one is going to print bonjour, and then it's going to print Guten Tag. Let's see. So because this one is not called main.py, Replit won't run it if I click the run button. So I'm going to type. Also, if you're in the terminal and you just hit the up arrow, it will enter whatever you said last. So I'm just going to type Python 3 and then the name of the file. And so bonjour and then Guten Tag. Yeah. So that's kind of what we're wanting to think about. You always want to think about like what will run if my answer is this, or what will run if the variable is equal to that. So let's try another one. Let's do num2 is equal to 0. Now what will happen? Let those answers roll in. Seeing some guesses. Okay, we've got a lot of people saying hello. Let's see what is going to happen. All right, so we have 13, we have 0. So if num1 is equal to num2, which is false, or num2 is less than 0, num2 is 0, which is not less than 0. So this is going to be false. So it's not even going to look at anything inside this if statement. We're just going to go straight to this else statement, and it's going to print hello. So let's check it so you believe me. Ah, oops. Typo. Hello. Yay. All right, so I've got that one. So I think I put the link to this in the slides. If I didn't, I'll add it after class so you can copy this and play around with it. Just what I encourage you to do is look at these examples, change these top numbers up here, and then try to think ahead of what is going to print, and then see if you're right or not. Go ahead and run it and see if you're right. So let's move on to example 2. We've got a couple minutes left in class. So this time I want to show you that you can actually use this with Booleans. So if you're doing this, so the if statements like before, it's evaluating this phrase here, and it's going to say if this evaluates to true or false. So you can really just say num1 equal num2. Well, that's false. So you can say if. So you can just replace this whole statement with false right here. So you can actually say if true, then it will run. So I feel like I didn't explain that well, but I'm going to show you this, and then if you have questions, you can ask. But so right now I have A is equal to true, so Boolean. We haven't worked with those a ton. And then B is false. And now we're going to say if A and B. So for and, we want both statements to be true. In this case, we have literal true or false. So if A and B, A is true, B is false, so that won't go because the and is not met. So now we're going to move to elif, A or B. So A is true, and we don't have to check the rest of it, but B is false. But that's okay because it's an or. So now this will run, and it says either A or B is true. Now we have a nested if statement where it says if A, print A, else print B. So A is true, so that's going to run this and print A. So I'm going to go ahead and run this so that you can see what it does. Real. All right, so it did just what we were saying. Either A or B is true, and then it's going to print A. So now, if I make B true, what will it print? Yeah, no problem if you have to hop off. And I'm seeing it as 7 now.
A and
so
B are true.
It'll print A and B are true. Yeah, yeah, A and B are true. Exactly. So now I'm going to make A false. Now what will happen? Yeah, I just said that. That it's 7. If you have to hop off, that's okay. That's all right.
See ya.
All right, see you guys. If you want to answer this question, no, go ahead. Yeah, so for me, it is 7 because I'm Central Time. For other people, it is a different time. Either
See
A
you,
or B
Melinda.
is true, then B. Bye. See you on Monday. All right.